Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Raise.Dev Hacktoberfest Help Desk. My name is Joe, and I'm your host for this evening, or this day, wherever you are in the world. This is our last show of the day. We've had two great shows before this, and we've got another one coming up with another very wonderful guest. But before that, a couple of housekeeping notes to run through, and a couple of things that y'all know if you are new to the show. So if you're new to the show, as I said, this is the Hacktoberfest Help Desk. This is your resource throughout Hacktoberfest, coming at you 3 times a day for the next 9 weekdays of Hacktoberfest left. We are here to help you land great pull requests this Hacktoberfest, whether that is through helping you and answering questions that you have about projects you're trying to contribute to or problems you have, or by bringing you some great guests who can help you with topics around Hacktoberfest. So we've got another guest today who's already in the chat, and we'll bring her on shortly and get going. In the meantime, a couple of warnings. So as I said, we're here to answer your questions. You can ask questions in the chat anytime throughout the show, and we'll do our best to answer them before the end of the show. If you want to share or post a link, you are very welcome. But please give me a heads up by mentioning Raise Devs and saying, hey, I want to post a link, because the internet is sometimes a scary place. And so we have a very active moderation bot. And as NH Carrigan has just said, NH Carrigan used to like to demonstrate our moderation bot by getting themselves banned. But today I added them to the VIP list, so now they can't do that. But if you post a link without asking, it will time you out for 5 seconds. So just drop me a message and I'll make sure it doesn't happen. So next up, if you want to ask us a question and you don't want to do it right now, say it's a big question, you need some more time to think about it, or it comes up when we're not live on air, you can also submit that question to our help desk here at Raise.Dev Hacktoberfest. When you submit a question to us, we review it with our guests, get it in front of them, they answer it here live on the show, and we email the recording to you right away so that you get the answer that you need. So you can submit questions at Raise.Dev Hacktoberfest. And then our schedule stick around at the end of the show and I'll do a schedule preview for the rest of the week. But our schedule for the week is up at twitch.tv RaiseDev schedule. That's updated weekly. So currently it has the schedule for this week, and we've still got a bunch more shows next week as well. And I said, hang around at the end and I'll walk you through what we've got going on tomorrow. I will say here at the beginning of the show, tomorrow morning, very excited. We have Matt Cowley, the community manager at DigitalOcean, who's been running the Hacktoberfest show, basically. Tomorrow morning, our first show. So please tune in and welcome Matt. He's been doing a fantastic job of keeping things running. So very excited to have Matt there on the show. We'll talk more about that later. And then the final thing from me before we get going is I've lost the banner. There we go. It's always a struggle at the 10 p.m. show, folks. The final thing is Raise.Dev. If you have not heard of us, we're a service to help you level up as a developer, whether you're trying to get your first job, do a career change, move from mid-level to senior, manage a team, whatever it is. We have a bunch of super lovely, super talented expert coaches who will help you along your journey and help you get the experience you need. And whilst you're in early access, we are completely free. So you can sign up to meet a coach today at Raise.Dev, and I'll speak a little bit more about that at the end as well. Woo. Okay, that's everything for me. Let me bring on our guest. Please welcome Dr. Sarah Guthals to the stream.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Joe. How are you? I'm doing well.
Very good. Surviving. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Sarah Guthals. I am coming to you from Seattle, or Redmond, Washington, here in the United States. I was born and raised in San Diego, and this is my first fall here in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S.
That must be terrible.
Oh my God, it's so beautiful. I love it so much.
Oh, really?
Yes. San Diego's beautiful, but it's like brown and blue always.
Right.
All the time.
Okay, yeah.
And here we have colors and I love it.
And I imagine lots of rain. My experience in
Yes.
Seattle was it was basically London in terms of climate.
Yeah, but like sometimes I'll hear the rain and then I'll walk outside and not get wet. I don't know. Don't ask me. It rains, but it's fine.
Cool. Right. Nice. Awesome. Right. Cool.
But yeah, I'm a principal program manager at Microsoft. I forgot I just was talking about where I live. And basically I work on creating content, whether that be Microsoft Learn modules, which I'll show you what those are in a little bit, or live streams or pre-recorded videos, or I don't know, I've done a couple of TikToks, like literally a couple, just kind of making content on helping particularly the people who what I call step 0, meaning, yes, there's a lot of resources for step 1,
right.
But step 1 resources make a lot of assumptions, and I get stuck before I can even follow those step 1 resources.
Interesting.
So basically, anytime I get stuck, I'm like, there's something missing here. Yeah. Let's go back and make that. So that's kind of what I try to focus on.
Fascinating. Okay, I made a note to talk about this,
yes.
Because there will be a time when that will come. So I guess to run folks through what we're expecting to do this show, we'll talk a little bit about Sarah and her day-to-day. She mentioned she's a principal program manager, and as we were joking about before the stream, as someone who's also had that title, program manager is sometimes a confusing title. So we'll talk a little bit about that and what your day-to-day includes. And then towards the back end of the show, we have a whole heap of projects. I got sent so many links. I'm so excited. So we're going to look at some different ways to contribute to stuff. We're going to look at some projects that you work on, look at some open source things, which are in the category of things I would say like a surprisingly but delightfully open source.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome, cool. So should we start with your day to day?
Yes. Oh gosh. So in my current role, I am in Azure engineering, but I'm on this team that is part of the like Azure advocacy group, and so. Basically, our All Up group focuses on how we can make sure that we're hearing what our customers and our users are actually trying to do, and maybe even what our non-users are trying to do. And we try to make sure that we're supporting them, whether that's in feature requests on actual products or, like I said, in content. My sub area is within the student. So that's like a traditionally named student in like a university or college, and reactors. So the Microsoft reactors,
such cool spaces.
Yes. Yeah. So we had like over 10 physical locations that are currently closed. But even if they're not closed, I mean, if they are closed, we still offer live streams every single day. And in like times that make sense for different regions. So then that way you don't have to stay up till 10 p.m. just to see me at noon.
Well, also the reactors were, I remember that I met Paris, who was working at the one in Bangalore.
I think, yes, I think so. There's so many people. It's a pretty big team. Yeah, but we had some in London, San Francisco, New York, Seattle, also in Australia, in Sydney, and in Bangalore, in Shanghai, and I think that's all of them. Oh no, Sao Paulo, Brazil as well. I
spent a lot of time in the London one. Lovely community spaces.
It is. And what's really cool is that if you run a community like meetup or something like that, you can sign up to use the space for free. I mean, when they're open. We don't charge you to use them. They're nice spaces. You can just bring all of your folks there, and it's awesome. So my team kind of focuses on building content for folks who identify as like, audiences in those two groups. And then, like I mentioned, I kind of focus on these, like what is, you're not like a child. You're not like, you have some competencies around like being able to like, look stuff up, but sometimes you don't know what you should be looking up or where to go next, those kinds of things. And I was focusing a bit on data science. So my day-to-day basically is thinking about all of those audiences, all of the different mediums that we can teach or develop content, all of the internal teams that we partner with, the cloud advocates is one big group, all of education, even the K-12 education folks, and like where do they stop and where should we pick up kind of stuff. And just kind of thinking about like, what do we want to bring to the table? And so my day-to-day, now that I've kind of described that org, is it can involve content writing. So I write Microsoft Learn modules. I work with vendors who help me write Microsoft Learn modules. So that's really awesome because I can get some real good expertise on some nuanced problem and have them help me figure out like how we can represent this well in a lesson. I record videos. I do live streams. I sometimes that content that I record videos on or do live streams on, sometimes that's like content that already exists. I'm basically walking through it. Sometimes it's just things that I think are interesting. And then I have a lot of meetings. Like I meet with people all around, and I mean, when I know you were thinking about chatting about this. One of the things that I got to work on recently is we got to partner with the Wonder Woman 1984 film. And this was a Microsoft partnership, but I got invited to join in on this partnership. And they had written some computer science lessons around
just that concept.
I know.
Why?
Well, Well, you'll have to watch the movie to find out exactly why we wanted to partner with them. But basically, there are some technical themes within the movie, and so we thought it would be fun to write lessons. So some partner teams within Microsoft, actually an intern wrote the initial lessons in partnership with some university professors. So cool. And then I took those lessons and made them Microsoft Learn lessons. So I don't know if you want to share.
Which literally came out like yesterday. Yeah, we can totally share. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Wow, so this is our like main partnership page.
So cool. It's like achingly.
I know.
A rad hero image.
I know. I got so excited about all of it. There's some really fun stuff on here that I wasn't a part of, but I did partake in. So the first part is like these chapters where you go through a code hunt and, the first chapter is this code hunt where you literally like have to like follow things. I don't know. It's really cool. You should try it out. But then if you kind of scroll down here, there's these learn to code lessons, and these two right here are the ones that I made. Or that were made, and then I kind of translated into
the Minecraft module as well.
Jeez. Yes. So I focus on, adults, so I don't tend to focus on the Minecraft stuff. But I did have a startup where we built modding for Minecraft. We can get into that later. But
casual. For that. For sure. That looks like you're doing some code cracking on that.
Yeah. So the first one is basically, and I think I just messed up the link, but let me get back to it. There we go. The first one is basically building a Caesar cipher. So I got to learn a little bit about Caesar ciphers too. Nice. And basically you just write some Python code. You don't need to have coding experience to try this out. We give you some instructions
step zero that you were talking about.
Exactly. And if this does feel a little bit too advanced, there is a module at the bottom to help you set up your Python environment with Visual Studio Code. So, if you need help with that, no problem. There's links to it. But yeah, you can see, this is, about a 38 or 38-minute lesson. Yeah. It's just meant to be fun and engaging and just learn a little bit of Python. So we did one on a Caesar cipher, and then we did one on like building a personality quiz.
Hey, Luke, thanks for joining. That's awesome. That's super cool. I love the badges for them as well. The whole aesthetic of everything.
They so pretty. Oh my gosh. Oops. Wait, I just lost you. What did I do?
I think you pressed the desktop shortcut.
I did. Which one did I press? Hang on one second.
I'll drop your screen.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Drop my screen for a second. Sorry about that.
Brief intermission.
I've been trying to get fancy with all of these like shortcuts and stuff, and then I mess up.
I did that in the middle of the stream. I accidentally hit a shortcut to close my whole Chrome window, and I was just I guess this is on their own. But they were slow in the middle of an explanation. They didn't even realize I left. Came back and I had no idea.
And I just did it again. Oh my gosh, this is hilarious. That's funny. Yeah, live streaming. It happens.
Yeah, that's what people come here for. They come here
exactly.
NH Carrican did say they're digging your wallpaper though.
Thank you. That's actually a sneak peek to something that's coming out on Friday. So you can check that out. I did not make
this does have to be said that we are catching Sarah between releases. We're extremely thankful that you're able to make the time.
I'm so glad to be here. This is what I care about the most. So
I guess we should circle around a little bit and talk about what Microsoft Learn is. So I'm a huge fan of Microsoft Learn. I actually did a talk at DevRelCon a while ago about what DevRel people could learn from traditional pedagogy, because we're so constantly making all these tutorials and documentation. And I had this rant is not the right word, but I had this deep feeling that so few people in the industry had ever actually read a book about teaching. And so I pointed to Microsoft Learn and was like, you see?
Yes.
So do you want to talk a little bit about what it is and how it works as a learning experience?
Yeah. And actually that kind of gets a little bit into my background. So I actually have a PhD in computer science where I focused all of my research on how people teach and learn to code, and computer science and software engineering kind of all together. So I would be happy to go on many rants with you about teaching and learning coding and the effectiveness of docs and things like that. So Microsoft Learn is actually fairly new. I think it just had its second birthday. But it's meant to be that, right? So we do take a lot of care in our docs. We have sample code and getting starter code and kind of guides for things like that. I actually really love our docs, especially some of the new things, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But Microsoft Learn was meant to be more than than just a doc for this technology or for this piece of code or whatever it might be. It's meant to bring like work streams or goals that you might have that would use those technologies or work streams or what have you.
Right.
And I actually am trying to take that one step further. And that's why, for example, the Wonder Woman stuff, I think that beyond just even like, this is what I want to do, having some kind of inspiration behind it is also something that I think is really, really important. I wrote this so when I was in grad school, I built this video game where it was like a 3D immersive video game and you were a wizard, and code in the game was represented as spells. And so you would walk around this game and try to help out these little gnomes by writing code and casting spells.
Does this game still exist? I've just found the paper, so I am going to be linking to the paper in the chat.
Yeah. No, it does. So that ended up, so the game that we originally built was definitely just built by me. I am not like a professional game developer, but it was built in Unity and you wrote Java code. And then we actually started a company out of grad school where we basically hired a couple of real game developers. And I say real kind of tongue in cheek because anyone can become one. I just didn't dedicate the time to.
For sure.
But to build like an updated version that had block-based coding as well as other coding, text-based coding. And I'm no longer with that startup. I left a few years ago.
That's ThoughtStem.
Yeah,
right?
That's ThoughtStem.
Cool. I did just post some random other one that had the same name. It's on Steam, which is like, that's going to sound really patronizing, but like, oh, wait, this is an early access one. Are they still making it? Are they doing a new? Or was this then?
I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. I have like left that company and I haven't like been in contact with them for a little while. I've just been so busy. But yeah, you should definitely check it out. But yeah, I mean, for that, so there's this book called The Mythical Man Month. And basically it's this book around like how it's kind of like the main premise of the book. I mean, it's a nonfiction, but it's talking about how, you can't just add one more person to a project and have it magically be faster by a month or whatever, it takes for that person to do it. Because the adding of people builds the complexity, and like code is not just code. It's also the people and everything. But there was one line in like the very beginning of that book that said, you type the right incantation on the keyboard and something magical appears on the screen.
Nice.
And that line
set you off. You're like, that's
literally like, that's all like, and
awesome.
I'm like a huge fan of like magic and like even before things like Harry Potter, right? Like it was like just, I loved all of that kind of stuff. And when I found computer science, it wasn't until I was like 18 when I found it. And that's how I felt. Like I had no clue what I was doing. I had no clue what I was doing. I could like send an email, sometimes like 50% of the time, make a graph in Excel and write Word docs. But that's like the extent to my computer like skills when I started coding. And it was just magical. It was just absolutely magical. It was magical but it was magical in the sense of like, you could learn it and there was community and like, something would happen and you're like, whoa. And then you could actually dive in to see why. So I got really, really inspired by that. And so while Microsoft Learn, to tie it back to what we were talking about, while Microsoft Learn, I think does a really, really great job of telling these kind of compelling stories. For example, if you want to share the screen real quick. In particular, we do have this, I need to share my screen first.
I'm ready to add it. There we go.
In particular, we do have this student page, which is not just for quote unquote students. It's also for just kind of anyone who wants to learn things. And we've tried to make sure that everything on this page has a bit more kind of story or context or why you would care. And so if you scroll down here, you can see that we've got some kind of intros to certain kinds of languages. And we also go into, where's one of my favorite ones? Oh, it's not one of the top ones anymore. So right now you can see that we're really, really focused on intros to languages, right? So
which makes sense.
And especially with things like Hacktoberfest, and we just had our Start Dev Change conference. It's all around like those folks who are just getting started. But you can also see that if you go into like browse all paths for students, we can get into content that we have curated to say like we think these are great pieces or learn modules that would support someone just starting out.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite ones is, let's see if it comes up. There we go. Track wild polar bears with AI, right? And it walks you through like not just how to use Azure functions and train a machine learning model and use Power BI, but it talks about it in the context of why you would care, right? Why would anyone want to use any of these technologies? It's not just to use them. And even if you don't want to go track polar bears through photos using AI and Power BI, that's okay. But you can take this kind of like idea behind it and share and kind of extrapolate that to things that you do care about. I'm going to send you this link too.
Sorry, I have to. We've got some folks in chat thinking we're pre-recorded because we're not interacting with them.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, chat.
I go on rants.
Sarah's
I'm so
in the
sorry.
middle of the thing. No, no, you were perfect. I was literally explaining to them in typing. I'm not interrupting a guest while they're showing us awesome things.
Yeah, no, I'm so sorry. I'll also double check.
This is the second time it's happened today. It's just because we're so like polished and professional.
Right.
No, this is a super. I super hear what you're saying about like making sure there's more inspiration, because I feel like we, just as like an industry, like rely a lot on like, hey, do this thing because it will further your career in tech. Like assuming that that's the end, that's the goal everyone is naturally already on, which is just like such a bizarro land thing to be on.
It is. By the way, my Harry Potter house is Ravenclaw, for those who were asking.
Nice.
Trying to set up Python. Actually, I do have a good resource for setting up Python. There's actually a couple that I'll share with you really quickly. So one is if you're on Windows, we actually have recently, and I can share links, yes?
Yes, you absolutely can. You will not get banned by the bot.
Perfect. We recently launched this install Python coding pack, which actually will install Visual Studio Code and Python environment with all the libraries that you'll need.
So you've done like a batteries included install? That's
exactly. So you should check that out. We also, you can see, have one for Java. We don't have the Mac one yet, but that is coming. And
so can I ask a really silly question? So that's for Windows. I'm guessing that's like pure Windows. It's not like setting up WSL2 and all that kind of stuff for you. It's
Correct. For that one. Yep. But we do also, I'm particularly interested in the data science stuff. So we also have these docs, which will work for any of the platforms.
Nice.
So this just kind of gives you the high level doc. This is specifically the data science tutorial, but we do have just general, like everything that you need to know about getting started with Python and VS Code.
Yeah. I feel like
we teach defense against the dark arts.
Yeah, I was about to say, every day someone comes into chat and shows me a new Twitch feature. I have no idea how they're making their text purple. But cool.
Also, like, that's awesome. I mean, like, I don't know what that means, but I want to take that class.
If that doesn't convince them that we're live now, we never will.
Right? I know.
Okay, so before we get off this, I want to go a little bit more into your education background and talk about, namely, just the fact that I can't believe we didn't cross paths while I was on the education team at GitHub. But also, you wrote the GitHub Dummies book, which is like such a super. Oh, do you have it?
It's back there. Yeah. I have like this little setup for the things coming on Friday.
Nice.
But I wrote that with my former manager at GitHub, actually, Phil Hatt.
Nice. He was a wonderful person.
He is. Yes, he is.
So that was just a random tangent.
Yeah.
I kind of know what you're talking about.
But yeah, real quick before we talk about more education-y stuff, the other thing that I was excited about was like NASA. I think like going to space is exciting. It doesn't have to just be NASA. It could be any of the space agencies.
I imagine a lot of the folks in your target audience also find that exciting.
Right. And so we built some modules. I got to chat with some NASA engineers and scientists to like actually learn from them. And so we built some modules around that too. But yeah, just kind of in general, like, you know, let's learn is all about attaching like context and narrative and inspiration to the things that you're learning.
Right. Super neat. Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you for showing us Learn. So yeah, I think it's a much more one of the things I really struggle with coding tutorials I tweeted about recently actually was this like, I'm a never-ending tutorial hopper where like I'll start a tutorial and be like, cool, this is the tutorial for me. I'm going to finish this tutorial and learn the thing. And then halfway through, I'll be like, oh, there's another tutorial there. That one looks good. I'm just going to go do that one now. And I like the learning path style of learn with, hey, here's the length of time it's going to take. Here's what completion means. I find very useful to keeping me on task.
Although you can see I am similar to you in that I start a lot of things and then I'm like,
you're just testing them with your program manager hat on. It's fine.
To be fair, the ones on the outside are the ones I wrote. So,
Oh, but... yeah. We're allowed to never finish our own content.
Right. But I'm very similar to you. But yeah, if you log in, which this doesn't require an Azure account, it's not paid. It's just a normal Microsoft account. If you log in, it tracks your progress. And it'll also suggest things based on what you're taking. So yeah, I like this as a feature. And a lot of times they have links to docs that are relevant. And it's all a part of our docs ecosystem.
Yeah, which I guess would be a good time to transition into the docs ecosystem and talk about that.
Yeah, totally.
Lots of people sympathizing with our tutorial problem.
Yeah. Yeah, so docs, oh my gosh. When I found out, and I've heard that y'all might have already heard from some other folks, but when I found out that docs.microsoft.com was open source, I was like,
we only very briefly touched on it.
That's brilliant. Like,
yeah.
Who better to flag issues or contribute than the people who are reading through your docs and going, this doesn't work. Let me raise an issue about that. I just thought that was kind of like a duh moment, right? Like, why don't we all do this? So docs is open source. So I wanted to briefly kind of walk you through some of the things that I think is super cool. So you can head over to docs. I'm usually over in like Azure doc lands. But like I said, you can see at the very top, we are really dedicated to trying to make sure that you have the things that you need, right? So if you're just getting started, here's some guides for that. If you need to prepare your org with the cloud adoption framework, I mean, that's not something I go into, but there's an overview for that, right? And then also here, these would link to all of the learn paths on Azure that are related to Azure, right? So we just kind of said here. There's
I guess you should briefly say, for anyone who hasn't encountered it, Azure is Microsoft's cloud product.
Thank you. Yes.
I realized I haven't addressed that before. So a very particular thing that's open source, but also it's really interesting because we had Erica Heidi on this morning, who is a technical writer. And one of the questions we asked Erica was Erica was talking about keeping their docs up to date when there's a new distro coming out and she works with DigitalOcean, so they have to update everything. And I was like, how do you keep track of that? And actually just making everything open source so someone can say, hey, this one's out of date is genius.
It is. And we do try to also track it, but there's so much.
Yeah.
I mean, as you can see, even just in the Azure category, we've got, these are just the featured ones. These are all of the ones.
It's such a wide array of products. It's everything you could feasibly do with a computer on the internet is essentially the docs ecosystem you're looking at.
Exactly. So for example, if you wanted to go into cognitive services, which is Azure Cognitive Services are basically our out of the box AI that you could use inside of your app. So you don't have to go building the custom vision, models. You just have to go train our custom vision model with your images and you can use it out of the box. And I know I want to learn everything too, to be honest.
Speaking of which, I just realized you sent me a link earlier that I missed to post. That's the link to the building ML model with Azure Stream Analytics that Sarah shared that I completely didn't post.
Sorry about that. I should have just shared it directly in there, but
my bad, not paying attention.
But yeah, so for example, if you get all the way down from the docs from Azure Cognitive Service Custom Vision, like I was mentioning, we've got quick start guides, how to do this. And there's two different ways you can do this. If you want, you can just do it within a web portal and you don't have to write any code. So if you're like, oh, I'm super interested in AI and how AI can start to see what's in images, but I'm not ready to dive into the code yet. I just kind of want to see how it works.
Yeah.
There's a no code solution for that. And you can just try it out. Right. And then if you want to try it out with code, here's the SDK. And this is one of my favorite features. Pick the language that you're coding in. You're in Python. There you go. Nice. You're in JavaScript.
Okay. I'm really glad to see y'all have this because this is something I tell people to do all the time. And the website I used to refer to for this recently got rid of it. And I'm like, why would you remove that feature? Now I could be like, Microsoft Docs have it.
Yep. Oh, and you asked no TypeScript. I'll get to that in just a second. So the cool thing is that, so let's say that we're on this page and we find a typo on here, whether it's a typo in that like maybe there's a new version or 2.7 doesn't work anymore, or it's just a typo in that they said resources but forgot the R. Okay. You can just come up here and click edit. And that will take you to this public. We can see it's not doesn't have a lock on it. Public repository. And directly to that markdown file, right? And you can see
super neat.
Yeah, what's going on here and just kind of what, like you can fork the repo and edit it and make a pull
Also,
request.
this is absolutely not a topic to get into here, but I'm very interested in the fact that you've got that like code toggler embedded in Markdown. That's very
yeah. So I'm
guessing that's been built by the framework somewhere. I'm gonna have to check that out. That's super clever.
Yeah, this one here, you mean? Oh no, the code toggler. Yes. Oh my gosh. This thing. I know. It's super cool. I have not dived into how they do it. I've used it though, and I love it.
That's very neat.
It's so cool. But yeah, and then if you wanted to, you could just head over to the main Azure docs and you can start to see like how to get started with contributing. This is what you need to do. Here's our code of conduct, our licensing. You should always make sure to read through these things so that you know, not just for Microsoft, but any open source project, like what you're contributing to, how you're allowed to contribute to it, how you're allowed to use it or share it, and how you should be interacting with people. And we can talk a little bit about that too, but these things are very, 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 very important. Probably more important, especially things like code of conduct, than the code that you're writing.
Yeah, I was putting that face because the license is Creative Commons, which is like, I mean, I was expecting it to be a permissive license, but that's super permissive.
Yes. We I think I was actually a part of GitHub before the acquisition. But even before that, I had seen that Microsoft really is trying to dedicate to like open source, right? Like really trying to make sure that we're for the developers where they need us, when they need us, which includes having open source things that are truly open source. You can see that folks have created issues around these, knowing the name of something and knowing something.
I still haven't learned the difference between that.
Yeah.
Someone said TypeScript.
You can. So you can go add TypeScript. Yeah, you could totally go in there and see. And now whether or not Cognitive Services supports TypeScript is another it's a whole other thing. But yes, you could totally master of all. Oh, right. Like jack of all.
They're having an alternate conversation as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I really there's some terrible tragedy is someone like going in there converting all the docs to a language before checking if that language was supported. I can definitely see that happening.
That would be sad. That would be very sad. But like for example, this one looks really, really useful. And this is just on the fly. I'm just kind of scrolling through. But someone was going through clearly able to understand both the Japanese and English versions of some kind of doc. And they went through and they're like, hey, like I noticed that the English version mentions this, but the Japanese version still mentions this. Should we be updating this? And this is great because this is someone who's, clearly using this and then they notice something different. And rather than just, make assumptions, this goes back to code of conduct, but also just general like behavior on open source projects. Instead of making like some assumptions and just going in and changing it and being like, you weren't supporting this. They were like, hey, is there a reason why this is the case? And they're like, hey, thanks, that was awesome. And then they were like, here's the Japanese version that I was pointing to. And so you can see that there's like just mutual conversations happening. And that is super, super, super awesome. And that kind of goes to the like, can you contribute if you don't know the code? And the answer is like always yes. Maybe not to every repo every day, but yes, there's definitely repositories out there where non-code specific contributions matter.
In terms of like effectfulness, non-code contributions, like you probably would struggle to find a project that's ultimately going to reach more users than like, the Azure docs if you wanted to make a contribution to something that wasn't code, right? Like,
True. This one's interesting. Again, I'm just kind of scrolling through. So someone said they were updating some sample code. And it's always a good idea to add in what you're doing. I would add in even more, but this one maybe is super, super straightforward. So the code sample is missing a / before a data set. And you can see that the changes that they were making is very simple. Just, hey, you forgot that. And then this one said, thanks. They've been, the authors have been notified because of course we want to make sure that this is, something that we do actually want to merge. Just double check there wasn't any issues there. And they, it's like they're working on it. So,
I was actually, one thing I just noticed, which is really interesting. I was putting a funny face because I was like, I suddenly realized this repo wasn't using issue templates, so it wasn't using the issue template selector, but instead you have like one template which has everything in it, which is also like cuts down on a lot of, I mean, the issue template selector is super nice, but I've definitely had that thing where I've opened it up on a project before and had like decision paralysis about like, so like it just being all in here. And like, so the reason I thought of that is because that issue you just showed didn't use a template, just wiped it all. And so like that is like a much less scary option when you don't have that like selector.
It's true. Yeah. And I think that's what's tricky, right? I think GitHub has done a good job of creating some features like the issue templates that do support kind of like positive workflows or like effective workflows between contributors, whether they be contributors of just issues or even of code. And the maintainers, but it's impossible to know like every single pathway that someone might take. So, maybe like doing all of this just for that one simple, hey, you forgot a / maybe it's overkill.
Which is also what's really interesting about this template is actually a lot of this template isn't stuff that should be in your issue. It's general instructions and is meant to be deleted, which was what took me.
Exactly.
And H. Kerrigan asked about a bot that was in a pull request. There was
Yes. Let's open up. I think it might have been this one. Oh, maybe it was the other one, actually. This one actually is a real person, I think. Oh, no. This one
with PR merger. Oh, nice.
Yep. So this one is a bot, I'm pretty sure. I don't actually know.
Merger 17, you would hope
so.
I'm
pretty sure. And basically what it does is it will just automatically add in a do not merge. They're probably using code owners for this. So it'll automatically pull in the code owner and add them as an assignee and then automatically comment, thank you, we've notified. I don't know how they've notified. I don't know if they just notified by assigning and requesting review, if there's another process that happens. But it looks like that's kind of what's going on. There was, I think, another one where
how
they
many
did that.
PR merger bots are there?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Okay,
I have no clue.
I'm now just like trying it because the naming scheme is consistent.
Right? I wanted to know, where was the other one we were looking at? There was another one I thought. Oh, there might have been on the issue, actually. Was it on the issue? I think we definitely have bots kind of in all the places.
There are 20. You have 20 of these bots operational across the projects, which is fascinating.
Yeah, so see, we can have the bot there.
Like the fact that you have so many PRs to deal with that you've like split the workload across 20 bots is because they all operate on the same repositories as well. This is wild.
Yes, but remember, Azure Docs is one repository for all of the docs for Azure, which includes all of these different technologies, which is going to be all different teams. And if you go into cognitive services, there's a different team who works on different cognitive services. So they probably different teams probably have different preferences for how they interact with things. Yeah.
And so like some of these PR merger bot 2 doesn't exist. PR merger bot 16, for example. Sorry, I'm now obsessed with this bot. This bot's my new favorite thing. PR merger bot 16 is in 11 repos across Microsoft Docs. So yeah, busy bot.
Wow. Yeah. I'm trying to remember now.
I'm going to be obsessed. I'm going to go like look into this Microsoft botnet after this. This is amazing.
I think this is the site I wanted to share. Check out the. I believe.
What happened to PR merger bot 2? I need to. This is like the story of the bots. I need to hear. PR merger bot 2 doesn't exist. Who got rid of PR merger bot 2? Oh yeah, Probot. Nice. We had Jason Ekovich on before.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can kind of see about how how to do these things and such.
Nice.
I recently started playing around with GitHub Actions, which I had never done before, but I have this repo, which is a good plug for it now, called Talks with Dr. G. And on this repo, I actually have this event.
There you go.
And all of the links that end up in tabs here, I'll add to here if they are not already. But part of my Talks with Dr. G, I've been doing some, for example, at Ignite, I did an intro to GitHub talk.
Right.
And as part of this talk, I invited people to add a note to our Ignite share board. And so basically it's a safe place for people to have their first PR.
Right.
Because when you're first trying it out and you want to submit a PR and you want to submit it to code, like a real project, you're like, oh, I don't want to bother them. At least that's how I feel. Like, oh gosh, what if I do this wrong? And you're just like, I just want to see the process and make sure I understand it. So this was a safe place for people to kind of do that. But the way that I had them do it was actually adding in a markdown file to this notes folder. So then they were just kind of creating this markdown file. So I created this action that'll basically bring in, and it does it on, it's not really nice yet. I'm working on it, but it'll basically bring in any of the markdown files that are in either my Ignite or Start Dev Change data folder. It'll just kind of bring them all in and save them into one file. But yeah, I got to play around with actions for the first time, and that was just a whole other realm.
I've never thought about this. Like, I used to do these kind of similar things with like school kids all up, like when I was at GitHub, we're like, hey, all come PR to this repo. And I left before actions was like available to everyone. And I never thought how much better that must make GitHub workshops in so many ways.
Yes. Yeah, because if you have everyone PR to the same file, then you get tons of merge conflicts and it's just like this disaster.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I just did it like this, and GitHub Actions was super, super fun. So rather than trying to figure out a bot and figure out all that, I just was like, let's just try this. And it was hard. Like, it took me hours to figure this out, but like, hey, it kind of, and it's not perfect. It'll do it on every single commit to main. So even if I don't add a file to the notes folder, it's going to check. But I'll clean it up later.
I mean, and there you go. There's an idea for a pull request for you. If you want to go add a restriction to which directory it looks at on that action, that's an easy PR.
Yep, definitely. I should probably add I should have added a share board to this one.
This also, by the way, makes you the most organized guest we've had both.
Honestly, I just am tired of losing things. Like my ADHD is just off the charts. I recently remembered I had ADHD. Like, I was diagnosed years ago and I literally forgot. Like, I'm not joking. Yeah. And like in February or March of this, I think it was like March of this year. I was like, why can't I think? And I saw TikTok on ADHD and I'm like, oh yeah. I have ADHD. So now I'm paying more attention to it, but I was tired of like losing slide decks and like, just remembering what I did in the year. Like, so.
Wow.
But speaking of organized, I also wanted to highlight one other thing. Have y'all seen the README that you can have on your GitHub?
I still, that's what I was saying to you before the show. I cannot believe this has not come up yet. I'm very excited.
Oh my gosh. When this first came out, I was so excited. Yay, I'm glad you have one. I mean, basically you just have to go into your repositories, and I think I have mine here already filtered by public, and you create a repository with your same GitHub username.
So it's very similar to GitHub Pages in setup.
Yeah, exactly. So you just create a new repository, Guthals, and then you create a README in there.
Oh, and you get a nice little green pop-up top right as well.
Yes. And when you first create it, you get a pop-up, I believe, too. That's like, hey, this is going to be on your profile. And you create a README, and you can basically add whatever you can add to a markdown file here. And it shows up on your profile. And this is super useful because even just for me. But also
I was smiling at your naming scheme. Talks of Dr. G, build of Dr. G, love of Dr. G.
Which, by the way, build and learn are pretty much empty right now. This is fairly new. I'm like, working my way up. But basically, it was mainly, again, just for me. So I can remember one place to go to find all of the things, and I can link to it from here. But also just useful for folks if they want to reach out to me, or if they have questions, or they just kind of want to know what I'm up to, or, whatever, if they hear me on a random stream and they're like, oh yeah, that person, hopefully this will help.
Absolutely.
And in addition to that, I did want to mention, I have a friend who is new to coding.
I was about to ask you about this one.
Yeah. He's self-taught. Like he's just learning on his own right now. You have sorry, I got distracted. A repo for things like Git commands that I need often enough to save. That is awesome. If that's public, you should definitely have that both on your README here for yourself, but also because that is super useful.
That kind of falls like under like the dot. We spoke about dot files very early on in the show, NH Carrigan, of like collections of like machine specific like config scripts. And you should definitely like slap those in like a bash script with it and alias them and put them as a dot file.
Yes. Oh, this is so beautiful. I love it.
See, Nicholas, this is why we gave you VIP, so you can post these great links.
Well, and okay, this is a perfect example also. Like, so you have an amazing README here, right? You talk about like what this is. Here's some workflows. Here's some commands. Here's some funny thing. Like what you can find. You add in your like contributors, which right now is you, which is awesome.
And perfect emoji usage.
Yes. So this is what I wanted to talk about. Like I have a friend who is, self-taught learning how to code. And we're working on like, let's just say you just have a side project. Like it's very simple side project and you're just working on something on your own for you to learn. Why not add a decent README to it? Sure. Number one, so other people can learn too. And number two, so then that way, if anyone's like, hey, what are you doing? Or like you're applying for a job, you can say like, here's all the things I did.
And also, it's just nice to look back on. Like when I look back on my past GitHub projects that have like nothing in the README, I'm like, I have no idea what this was or what this was here for. But like having that context around like what this project is and why you made it is so rad.
And that's why I created these repos. Like I haven't done it yet, but I'm telling you, like I'm so tired of forgetting things. And you don't have to have everything on the Build with Dr. G repo. It can be just links to the other ones. Obviously, I haven't done it yet, but that's kind of my intention. But yeah, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be something that you spend 10 hours on either. Like, this person, they wrote this short description. They were like, I have two things in here. There's a server program, a client program. The server basically does this. The client basically does this. And they mention credits. Now, obviously like almost every line of code has been written by someone at some point. Maybe not every, but you don't have to necessarily credit like every tiny little thing. But if you're heavily influenced by someone or you learned from someone, credit them not only to give proper credit, but also so that way if someone looks at this and they're like, oh, this is cool, I want to learn more, they know where to go next.
A useful book, Also, I noticed that you were looking at Caesar hash code. Is this related to the Wonder Woman exercises?
It isn't, but I do want to take a look at this and do like a part 2 because the Wonder Woman one is fairly simple. This one actually does a little bit more like server program or server client.
I was
stuff.
Using sockets for a start, which
exactly.
Cool.
But I did want to take a look at that. But yeah, and they've got just like a couple of different, this one's fun because they were like, look, I've just got 3 projects that like are pretty small and I just threw them all right here and check them out. Here's all of the different things.
One thing I want to point out on this, which is really important, often gets forgotten. This is just like this person's collection of their little snippets and stuff. And it still has a license. And that's important because like one thing that a lot of people don't realize or don't think about is like, you can throw your code in the GitHub repo. It is not open source. Other people cannot use that unless it has a license. So even on like little stuff like this, if you're interested in like actually being open, hang on. Have you got like, do you want to show people the license walkthrough? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, let's do it. I mean, you just go to GitHub.
You don't even have to know what you're doing or copy and paste the license. There's a picker built in.
Yep. So I'm not going to do templates is also just so cool, by the way. I don't know if y'all know about this, but you can create a template of a repository and then you can start a repository from that template. So if there's like a bunch of like, I don't know, starter code or just docs or whatever you want to always have, I love it.
So all this stuff we're talking about, you don't have to do every project. Just make it once, do it as a template.
Exactly. Help desk. And then we'll make this public. And I always add a README just because it's easier that way for me.
Choose the license is there as well now?
It is. Yep.
I didn't even know about that when I said this. I was going to say making a file called license.
Yeah, no. So yeah, you go to, you can add in git ignores. Git ignores are useful because if you have like, for example, I was doing a lot of development on Macs and Windows, and I'd go back and forth, and there's just a bunch of like extra little things that Mac like produces, and no one else needs that.
So we store, our good friend DS Store.
Yes. And then choose a license. And here you can just search through these. But if you don't know what you're doing yet, you can also click on learn more.
Yeah.
And it takes you here.
Right.
And this is like a longer doc that kind of explains things. But what I love is this site here, which I will throw all of these into the chat. This one in reverse order. This one.
Click on this one.
And this is super, super useful because it's just like this easy way of like understanding what you need to do. So let me zoom in a little bit. I need to work in a community. So this is, for example, you want to use the license preferred by the community when you're contributing or depending on it. And if you have a dependency that doesn't have a license, ask its maintainer to add it. So if you already are going to be contributing code to an existing community, go look there first, right? Like see what they're already using. Right. If they're not using something and you want to use something, ask them. I want it simple and permissive. So the MIT license is short, to the point. It lets people do almost anything that they want, like making and distributing closed sourced versions. So that's like they can take your code and then they can take it and then they can close source it and then they can do whatever they want with it.
Right.
And then they also give you some projects that use that, for example, like .NET Core. That was another thing. Like all of .NET is open source, all of it. I care about sharing improvements. So the new GPL v3 GNU, however you want to say it, GNU, whatever you want to say, I don't care. Also lets people do anything that they want with your project except distribute closed source. And basically that just means you can do whatever you want, but I want to make sure that anything that stemmed from my code is always available to everyone. And so things like Ansible, Bash, and GIMP use that. Nice. And then if you don't want, here's like a bunch of other like links that you can kind of go into. Here's what happens if you don't have a license.
Like the unlicensed as well or something, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I want more choices. And here's all of the different ones. It shows you permissions, conditions, limitations, and what happens if you have no license. What happens to you, your code, and your users.
Nicholas mentioned the Hippocratic license. We had a conversation about that yesterday in the Hacktoberfest Discord, which I guess wouldn't come on this page because this page explicitly is talking about the OSI definition licenses.
Yes.
Yeah. Soon, hopefully, maybe.
And this is also useful to what we're kind of chatting about with regards to like non-software contributions or non-coding contributions,
like Creative Commons.
Yeah. So my software doesn't, or this isn't software. There are actually licenses for that. And there, if I remember right, there was someone who wrote a book using GitHub. I can't remember now.
Bunch. Like the Rust book was written on GitHub.
Okay. I'm thinking of like a fiction novel.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like just like a literal, just like all words, no code book, which I thought was so cool. And
I've just found one.
Did you?
A diesel punk novel. I don't know. Is this a real book? It is. This novel's available on github.com. So at least someone's done it. That's fascinating.
There you go. Yeah. I don't know. That was cool though. I thought that was neat. And yeah, I did want to touch real quick also on there's, we talked about docs and we talked about your own project and adding kind of like readmes and stuff. But what if you like really love a technical project, like a code, like a product, a piece of software, and you wanted to contribute it to it, but you're not like ready to write the code for it yet. I did want to mention, for example, Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is open source. And I did want to highlight 2 recent pull requests to Visual Studio Code that has nothing to do with like the editor.
The numbers on this we're currently seeing just make me itchy looking at them. 5K open issues and 247 pull requests. Oh, the 14.
Although if this is pull request number 108,451, and there's only 237 open, then you can tell that this is a very active repository by the maintainers. So, but for example, like this one, there was a typo, right?
Yeah.
So there was an extra T in highlight.
Highlight.
Yeah. And so they're like, hey, I'm pretty sure that there's an extra T there. And if I remember right, I think this is actually, so this is code, but it's just a typo. Like you do not have to fully understand the code to be like, I'm pretty sure that this is wrong.
Yeah.
And it's great because, you're just kind of going through it. You're reading through the code. You're trying to figure stuff out. You're just learning for the first time. And you're like, I'm pretty sure this is a typo. You can be a contributor. Right. And people are like, hey, I think there's some other ones that you might have missed. And, like they help you through build errors and stuff like that. So that's one thing. And then the other one is this one specifically on docs. So this was merged in February. And this person was like, hey, I'm pretty sure that there's a missing, tick in the docs. That's it. And this is just a comment, like just a comment. But I say just because comments are important. It does not change anything other than if someone who is newer to this project looks at this, they might think that means something else. Right. And we want to be clear in comments, in code, and in docs that anyone who's looking at these like actually understands what's going on. So I just wanted to highlight that, like, while VS Code has 237 open pull requests and over 5,000 issues, and a lot of them have to do with code, these types of contributions, whether they're issues or pull requests where you're saying, hey, I'm pretty sure this is wrong, those are so useful. And if they're not, they will tell you, hey, we don't care about that, which is fairly unlikely.
And gets back to what you were saying towards the beginning of the show, that like, hey, open an issue if you want to check first. If you're worried that what you're doing isn't going to be welcome, ask before you get there, and they'll be easy enough to clear up.
Read through some of them too. Like go through some of the issues, find ones that have like comments on them, just kind of click on them and say, hey, I think this is a bug. See what's going on.
Which is also, while you're on this is a useful thing to know. You get little badges next to people that tell you what role they are in the project. So if you scroll down, you see this person here, MJBVS, has member. So you'll get to know by doing that as well, like who's actually part of the project and what kind of response you can expect from them, because it will say like member, contributor, whatever.
Yep, exactly.
And it'll also tell you if someone's a bot, which I guess this bot is very clearly labeled on like PR friend, PR merger 17.
Yes, definitely. Oh, and we were going to mention the TypeScript now because I just saw TypeScript. Oh, yes, again.
You said, because TypeScript on cognitive services was like maybe doesn't it?
Yes. So there's, I'm trying to remember. Oh, this is the demos. Hang on. This is going to be a quick little search on YouTube because I just did a talk, a live stream, and this is going to be difficult, but I just did a live stream recently where we were talking about how the Azure SDK is open source.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure, oh gosh, here, I bet I can find it here. Azure SDK GitHub. That's why it was. There we go. Okay. So the Azure SDK is open source. So yes, if you wanted to do your own one. I know, should we just watch the whole stream within this stream?
I'm just thinking that would actually be great. We should do watch parties. We'll come and do a conference watch party from the stream.
But you can see in here, these are the different languages that the Azure SDK supports and or like doesn't. So you can see that C#, Java, JavaScript, and Python, they have packages for the Azure SDK and documentation for them. But you can see that, for example, Go doesn't yet, right? But there is a design guideline for the Go SDK for Azure Cognitive Services. Yep. And you can also head over to the actual repo for it, which is not going to be ready yet, but you can start to see like what they're working on. You can see what shape it's in, Exactly. So there's some really awesome resources here about like the actual SDKs and all that. But yeah, TypeScript isn't on there. For some reason, I thought it was. I might have been thinking something else.
Oh, it says the JavaScript one. Oh,
maybe.
Yeah, you're right. In the first column of JavaScript, it's got design guidelines.
Oh, you're right. Oh, right.
Interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. Now I'm curious why. It might be that they're doing it like both.
maybe they're converting the JavaScript one to be TypeScript. Because it's pretty common for SDKs, even if you don't have to use TypeScript with them to be, you don't have to interact with them in TypeScript for them to be written in TypeScript, right?
Yeah.
I'm not just making that up. Somebody who knows TypeScript, tell me that I'm not just speaking out my bum. And Kerrigan's going to PR that.
Yeah, for the benefit of both TypeScript and JavaScript. So it seems like they probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
these all TypeScript. Cool.
Yeah. So here's your Azure SDK, and here's the documentation for it. Right.
Right.
It's
cool.
All right there.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for circling back and answering that question.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Cool. So I think we've exhausted your document. Oh god, this is so helpful to have one of these. This is very nice.
I think those are all of the things. We can pull back.
Does anyone else have any further questions before we lose Sarah? Give the people a couple minutes to reply for that.
Yeah, totally.
So whilst we're doing that, where on the internet? Well, we've got your doc now, so we know some place people can find you. If people have any further questions, where's the best place to reach you?
Probably Twitter. That's kind of where I just kind of hang out.
There you go.
Throw that in there. It's not all tech stuff. It is also sometimes like dog stuff.
Dogs. Good content. Oh my god, the eyes on the one on the left.
I know. That's Winston. And Molly is now like at least 3 times bigger than this. Winston is the King Charles Cavalier and Molly's a golden retriever.
Amazing.
I also have a toddler, but I try not to post too much about her, but I might post like little anecdotal things about.
I've definitely seen some anecdotes about.
Yeah, like the other day she was like, "No, you put my clothes away," and I was like, "What am I, your mother?" And she was like, "Yes." Oops. Yeah, you're right. I am totally your mother. But yeah, so and then I also have 2 cats, but I rarely post about them because they're usually just kind of snuggling me.
Yeah, nice. Awesome.
But yeah, was there something else I was going to mention? I guess not. I mean, I think
where should people keep an eye out on Friday?
Yes, definitely on Twitter. And I mean, I'll post everything on Twitter once it's out. But yeah, there's some new Learn content and some new videos and things coming. And I'll have and I will have a live stream next week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. PT, which is in an hour from right now.
Right. So, do you know which channel that's going to be on?
Yes, that'll be on the Twitch Microsoft Developer and or on Learn TV. I can drop some links down below.
Rad.
So this one is Learn TV. Will be both there and here.
So 3 p.m. Pacific time. When was that? Sorry, next Wednesday? Monday.
Tuesday, the 27th.
None of those days. Tuesday, 27th.
None of the days.
Wonderful. Awesome. Cool. Right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us and running us through some great ways to contribute to projects.
Thank you for having me. I hope it was helpful in some way, at least to like find other resources that might be useful for you all. And feel free to reach out in any way, shape, or form.
Judging by the size of that thank you just got from Nicholas, I would say it was useful.
I'm glad.
All righty. Thank you so much. I'll do the backstage shuffle.
All right. Bye.
Oh, cut off me. Goodbye. I'm so bad at that. Anyway, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for joining us on the show. So yeah, that was a fantastic show. So we covered a little bit of what being a program manager is like, spoke about Microsoft Learn and some of the great facilities it gives you to learn, some awesome new courses that they've got going on with very cool tie-ins, journeyed through the open source Microsoft Docs program all the way through to the Azure Docs, and then looked at some various ways you can contribute and set up your own repositories. Super awesome. So that was our shows for today. That's all of them, as you can tell, because I'm starting to lose the ability to speak English. Let me round out with our schedule for the rest of the week. So for those of you who are new here, if you've joined us during the stream, thank you. Welcome. Join the stream. We stream 3 times a day, and we're going to be streaming 3 times a day throughout the rest of October. We have a full week of streams, and we've got more coming up tomorrow. So let me run you through my streams. As Nicholas says, we have a stream 10:30 p.m. UTC or 3 a.m. in Washington, which is with Mr. Matt Cowley, who has avoided our stream tonight, probably because he got fed up of me talking about his stream. But Matt Cowley is the community manager at DigitalOcean, who has been working very hard on Hacktoberfest as many people at DigitalOcean have, but Matt has been managing the community and working a lot on the app to deal with some of the spam issues that we saw earlier in the month. So we're going to be chatting about all things. Oh, he's doing work right now. I did see some him posting some stuff. So we're talking to Matt about Hacktoberfest tomorrow. Hacktoberfest, the app that powers it is open source. So we're going to be getting into that code with Matt. It's very exciting. And then we have Daniel Firry from Strappy.js. Daniel is a developer advocate over at Strappy. Strappy is a headless CMS. So if you're making a website that's, say, a blog or has any other content, you can use Strappy and connect to it with whatever client you want over GraphQL or their REST API. We're going to be chatting to Daniel tomorrow about... I can't remember. I can remember one part. We're going to be chatting to Daniel about the community impact of open source projects. And then I can't remember the other thing. I'm terrible. And then the last show, this time tomorrow, we have Hugh Rawlinson. I believe he's here in the chat. I see a Hugh in the chat. I don't know whether it's lying to me or not. But with Hugh Rawlinson, we're going to be looking at, we're going to basically be doing, looking at this blog that Hugh wrote, which was all about automating releases, I do believe. So that's super cool. Hugh does some really awesome developer automation stuff in some of the projects that Hugh is involved with. So we're going to be diving into that, and it's going to be a good time. Thursday is another very Microsoft day. I don't know how we keep doing this. As I've addressed before, when we had the accidental Twilio day, I send guests a link where they can book the show. And so we just so happen often have the stars aligning. And so Thursday is another Microsoft day. We've got Beth Pan, who is a contributor, and we're going to be talking about Microsoft Graph development. What is this? Microsoft Graph Toolkit, which is a collection of web components from Microsoft Graph. We've got Adrian Howard, who is a developer advocate at Courier, and then we've got Jennifer Davis, who is also at Microsoft, and that is going to be looking at Porter, which is a project in the DevOpsy world of things. They just recently got added to the CNCF incubator, so that's going to be super cool. Is this an indicator of which days are slow days at Microsoft? Definitely not. They're all on different time zones as well, so they're all coming at us when it suits them. And then Friday, we've got Josh Zilak from Orbit. Orbit is a super cool startup that I am very excited about, because one of the big problems they're solving is like measuring success in the DevRel world. So I've been very excited to see their work there, but they also make a really cool app for kind of measuring the community activity of your GitHub projects. So we've got Josh from Orbit, we've got Stefan Young from Customer.io, and we've got Corey Alexander, who that's going to be a double bill code episode. We're going to be doing the old code game, where a guest brings their own old code and we review it in terms of what they know now. One of Corey's old open source projects, and then Corey's going to show us one of his new open source projects and talk about how we can use it and contribute to it. So super exciting week, and I'll talk about the schedule next week towards the end of the week. We've still got too much content this week to do that. But yeah, that's all that schedule. If you want notifications of when we go live, because we do go live 3 times a day, which is a lot to keep track of, you can follow us here on the show. You can press the little love heart on Twitch. That will not give you notifications because it's a 2-step process. You have to press the love heart and then press the bell. So if you want notifications, press the little love heart and then press the bell. Or you can find us at Raise Devs on Twitter, where we tweet an hour before every show. So it's impossible to miss us if you follow us on Twitter and follow us on Twitch. We will get you with a notification somehow. And other than that, that's everything from me. Thank you very much for listening to my waffle, and thank you for coming to our show and listening to our wonderful guest. The last thing, if you are looking to level up in your developer career, whether that's getting your first job or changing roles or changing careers, as we heard from some of our guests, Layla from Twilio, who moved from horse riding into development. We've had people move from all kinds of arts things into development. Rain moved from dancing into development. All kinds of really interesting career transitions we've heard about on the show. If you want that to be you, our expert coaches can help you make that transition with all the guidance on the projects and everything you might need. And you can sign up completely for free today at raise.dev whilst you're in early access. A little note, if you sign up, you may see a note about being on the waitlist. This is a genuine waitlist. We have had a lot of people sign up, which we're very thankful for. But these are real calls that take real time with real coaches. This isn't like a 10-minute hi-bye situation. These are like long, lengthy calls where you genuinely have a chat with an experienced developer and you set up to continue those chats and keep meeting with them to work towards progress. So they do take time, and it takes us time to match you with people as well. So we're getting through the calls as fast as we can. We're onboarding new coaches all the time. But if you see that message, do not be alarmed. You will get matched with a coach just might take a little while. So thank you very much for your patience. So yeah, that's everything from me. I hope you have a wonderful night or wonderful rest of your day. Nicholas, you're not going to have either of those because you're going to be up until 3 a.m. for our next stream. For the rest of you, I hope to see you at a stream sometime soon in our schedule. And other than that, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will catch you very soon.